They laughed at the human before the tribunal even finished sealing the chamber. It was a low ripple of alien amusement, echoing off crystal walls as the accused species sat alone at a metal table meant for prisoners, not diplomats. When the presiding counselor sneered that Earth's wars were primitive scuffles unworthy of record, no one noticed. The way the oldest witness in the room, a scarred, gray-scaled alien veteran, went very, very still. The chamber floated in a geosynchronous orbit above the galactic capital, a place where empires settled disputes with words and holograms, not blood. Today's proceeding was supposed to be a formality, the trial of humanity's right to bear arms beyond its home system. The human present was Lieutenant Mara Kincaid, United States Space Force. She stood at attention despite being ordered to sit, her uniform stripped of insignia, hands clasped behind her back as if she were on a parade ground instead of under alien scrutiny. She looked small under the lights, a single biped among towering species with chitin, fur, or luminous skin. The council took this as confirmation of everything they believed. Humans were latecomers. Humans were violent but inefficient. Humans burned through generations for inches of territory. They'd survive by luck, not skill. Kincaid had been warned not to speak unless addressed, warned that any show of aggression would justify sanctions, warned that this room was stacked against her. She followed every order with disciplined stillness, eyes forward, jaw set, the very picture of restraint. The counselor played sanitized footage of early human conflicts, black and white clips of infantry charging machine guns, of cities in ruins. They declared with smug certainty that such chaos proved humanity's unfitness. Their voices grew sharper, more confident, suggesting disarmament, occupation, guidance. The alien spectators leaned in, savoring the humiliation. Kincaid listened to translations buzz softly in her ear, and thought of instructors who taught her to endure, to wait, to let the enemy talk themselves into mistakes. It was when the council demanded testimony from its final witness, an honored veteran of the car, Vac War, that the temperature of the room shifted. The alien, called Drexel by the interpreters, moved with the stiffness of old wounds as he approached the dais. His metals were dull with age, his eyes clouded but focused. When asked to summarize his encounters with human forces, he did not begin with strategy or casualty counts. He began with silence. It was a silence long enough that the council hissed in irritation, long enough that the laughter died. Then Drexel spoke, and his voice was rough, carrying the weight of vacuum and fire. He said he had fought dozens of species, crushed rebellions, broken fleets. None of it had prepared him for humans. Because humans, he explained, did not fight like conquerors or predators. They fought like survivors who had already lost everything and refused to lose more. He described first contact skirmishes where human ships appeared outdated, underarmed, retreating at the first exchange. They were luring Karvak forces deeper, always deeper, until supply lines stretched thin and human resistance hardened into a wall of iron. He spoke of boarding actions where wounded humans kept advancing. They weren't screaming, not roaring, just moving forward, eyes locked, hands steady, as if pain were merely a suggestion they politely declined. The council members shifted uncomfortably as Drexel recounted trench networks carved into asteroid regolith, defended for months without relief. The humans were recycling air and water with desperate ingenuity, singing to keep time while artillery shook the very rock apart. He admitted haltingly that the Karvak had mocked those songs until they realized the rhythms were masking coordinated counterattacks. Kincaid felt her chest tighten as Drexel described prisoners who refused extraction because their units were still engaged, and engineers who wired themselves into failing reactors to buy minutes, seconds, just enough time for civilians to escape. The council interrupted, accusing the veteran of embellishment, but Drexel's gaze hardened. He requested permission to submit after-action records that had been sealed for centuries. Holograms bloomed in the air, not propaganda but raw, unfiltered telemetry. Casualty curves bent impossibly as human losses spiked then stabilized, while enemy losses climbed with a terrifying, relentless consistency. He showed footage of a human commander refusing orbital bombardment on her own position because enemy forces were too close to refugees. Instead, she ordered a countercharge, winning the engagement with bayonets and vacuum suits. The room went quiet. This was not chaos. This was discipline sharpened by horror. The turning point came when Threxel addressed Kincaid directly and apologized. He apologized for underestimating her people, for calling them weak, for failing to understand that humanity's greatest weapon was not technology, but the collective memory of wars fought to the brink of extinction and somehow impossibly survived. He said humans learned faster under pressure, adapted doctrine in days that took other species decades. When faced with annihilation, they did not seek mercy. They sought leverage. The council demanded to know why, if humans were so formidable, they hadn't conquered their neighbors. For the first time, Kincaid was permitted to speak. Her voice was calm. She said it was because conquest was expensive, because occupation bred resistance, because humans preferred deterrence backed by capability, and because every single war left scars they remembered. The climax hit when Threxel revealed the final record, a Carvac strategic retreat, logged as a victory to save face. It was triggered not by defeat in battle, but by intercepted human deliberations. They were calculating acceptable losses and had decided unanimously that if the war continued another month, the humans would escalate to measures that would end the conflict permanently for everyone. The implication hung heavy in the air. Not super weapons. Not total annihilation. It was commitment. The council realized then that the human in this room was restrained not by weakness, but by choice. The smiling, primitive species they had planned to guide had a deep well of resolve they had only ever shown when their backs were against the wall. Panic rippled through the chamber. Motions were withdrawn, sanctions tabled, voices lowered to whispers. Kincaid stood straighter, not triumphant, just steady. In the resolution, the tribunal adjourned with new terms: mutual defense, shared training, and respect. As the lights dimmed, Threxel watched the human depart. He understood too late that the most chilling account of human warfare was not how they fought when unleashed, but how carefully they held themselves back. His final testimony was entered into the archives with a simple, haunting note that echoed long after the chamber emptied: "Do not mistake restraint for mercy."